Welcome to another quick bite episode of Now Loading Podcast. It's just me here today, Darren Hupke, and I just want to throw out a question for you guys to think about, and I will chat about. But that question is, what genre got you hooked on video games? What was that first genre that kept you coming back and playing forever? So think about that right here, right now. All right. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Again, just me solo, Darren Hupke only. Rich and I will reconvene soon and have a main episode for you soon. But for now, I just want to kind of hear your answers to that question and share my own answer with you. As always, we'd love to have the feedback that you guys provide us. Give us a call to our voicemail line at 605-777-0433. It's just a simple automated message, Google Voice line. You don't actually talk to anybody. You call in, you hear a tone, you record your message. So share your feedback, share your opinions, and tell us your story about what your favorite genre was. What was that? Oh, I guess let me rephrase that. Not necessarily your favorite genre, but what was the style of game or the genre of games that initially got you hooked to gaming? I mean, for myself, it's definitely like old school Japanese RPGs. Like that's what got me like just 100% hooked forever to video games. Now, that's not necessarily my favorite genre these days. My taste has evolved. I mean, gaming's evolved from those style of games just because of a combination of hardware and design, but also because of things like the internet and the power of the consoles themselves and the experiences that you can kind of create from them. So, I mean, it's most likely not going to be the same type of game you love today, you loved then, but what was it then that got you hooked? So yeah, give us a call, share that with us, always on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, things like that too. You can find us at NowLoadingCast or Facebook.com/NowLoadingCast. Leave us your messages, get in contact with us, reach out. That's what these are for. That's what I want this question thrown out there for, is to hear back from anybody and everybody who's listening. But yeah, so I'll explain a little bit of the reasoning why I loved RPGs and Japanese RPGs specifically. I've had systems, all my life. I mean, I was born and before I could even really make a decision, we had an Atari 2600. I was 4. We got an original NES. From there, I convinced my parents to let us sell the NES and put it towards buying a Sega Genesis. And then after that, that's when I was pretty devoted to games. We weren't buying games regularly, but I was reading gaming magazines regularly. And my best friend had the same kind of habit. He had his own system and everything. He wasn't getting games regularly per se, but we were addicted to knowing what was coming up and the wonder of it. So once I got to be the age where I could pick that next system I wanted and looked into it and everything, and I picked the PlayStation. That was when the golden age of the RPG was kicking off. I had explored and dabbled in them before. On the Genesis, we had my brother and I had Phantasy Star 3, and we spent some time with it. We never completed it or anything. I don't have a lot of fond memories of it, but we did enjoy it for the time that we had it. But ultimately, we ended up lending it to just some kid at school. I forget the kid's name, actually. I'm pretty good with names. And who was this kid? Oh, geez. Casey, if you listen, send me a message. Let me know if you remind me of this kid's name. I don't know why. I'm just going to remember. I want to know it. But he ended up losing the game, never returned it to us. We didn't get it back. It wasn't a huge deal because I think we'd kind of moved on from our interest in it. But I always thought about going back to playing it and just never got to because we didn't have it. He gave us $20 that we split, $10 a piece for Casey and I, and that was it. I ended up investing that $10 into candy and junk food at school, and never got to play it again. And then we had an uncle who had a copy of Final Fantasy III on his Super Nintendo. He lived in a different state from when we were growing up, but every time, the couple of times that we'd visit and we'd see, I remember I always wanted to play it, but he never wanted us to play it. He didn't think we'd understand the type of game it was or how you'd actually play a game like that which is weird. I mean, it's not a complex genre. It's not a complex system or anything. So it's funny that he thought we'd be too limited or lack the comprehension to understand that game. But we managed to play it for a little while there, and that just kind of got my interest piqued. Like I wanted to explore more of what type of game that was, because back then, Super NES, Genesis, you're playing a lot of platformers and beat 'em ups. The occasional puzzle game, but that was just a different and a newer genre to me. So when the PS1 hit and I got my own, of course I had my initial demo disc that introduced me to Parappa the Rapper, and I think the first game I actually bought was Twisted Metal. So it was still more action games and things actually pushing the hardware of the PlayStation. But once I got the first RPG, and like I've said before in the past, like Final Fantasy VII being my favorite game of all time. Something about that genre, like I would seek out any other RPG anytime, regardless of its potential quality. I mean, at that age and at that time in the mid '90s to late '90s, you didn't really get to like research so much about the games in advance. I mean, you'd see magazines with some preview screenshots and some opinions on it, but it's not like this day and age where you're saturated with potentially like demos in advance and so many like trailers and gameplay videos and advanced reviews and just the entire like spread on the internet that when you buy a game now, you've done almost everything you can do in that game besides press, the start button yourself. So when I was younger, it was 100% almost all wonder and all unknown. So I know just based on the box or a brief preview I read, I knew it would be an RPG, but I knew I'd get some wild story that I really didn't know much out of, but I knew it would be long-winded, and the value was always intriguing because there'd be sometimes like a game like Twisted Metal, which I love. I mean, I love that series. It definitely, took a hard turn and never was, quite the same after 1 and 2. But it had its moments, but that's a game that you could probably play for, 2 or 3 hours, kind of be done with it. Maybe a couple weeks later, try it again. Try out some different cars and vehicles, but it's an action game. It's a competitive game, and you're going to play that in bursts. You're not going to play that consistently over a long period of time. And that's why I liked the idea of an RPG, because I knew it would be like a story, like a long book or a long movie or something that would tell out over a long period of time, and I can control the pace by finding side quests or grinding out, random battles just to get my characters overpowered, or finding hidden items, or even trying to find hidden things I wouldn't be able to otherwise find. Today, again, you could look that stuff up on the internet. Then you had to just try and figure things out, on your own, which took even more time to try and find that stuff. So there's just that value piece, I think, that definitely hooked me because of just the length of time of it. The gameplay stylings, too, you didn't have to be like super skilled at playing those games. Like if you wanted to be good at like Street Fighter in the arcade, you would need to know like all the special moves. You would need to know, the characters you're fighting against and things like that. And that was always intriguing, but I could never play them enough because I'd be doing the same thing over and over again, and you just wouldn't be quite as interested in it. With an RPG, you have like a turn-based battle system where you can kind of plan your strategy out. If you die or lose or fail, whatever, you kind of restart from the from just shortly before that and kind of continue your adventure. It's not like you're starting the game over from scratch again with the level 1 items or from the first level and having to replay all over again. You're still progressing and you're still growing your characters and finding new items to make you stronger. So there wasn't a risk of having to restart or lose progress. It was just a strategy of like, well, how do I find the best combination, or how do I, get strong enough, or what enemy should I grind out, long enough to buy or find, the right items. And so that was also kind of a different thing at the time for me. I don't know, maybe I'm over explaining the mechanics of an RPG. I mean, I think most people understand what that is, but in my brain at that time, being 8 to 14 years old, I'd say that age range is when I was most obsessed with RPGs. There was just definitely like those things that just hooked right into me, and I could keep playing them forever and ever. Like, doesn't matter the company who put it out. If it had a decent story and it had like some kind of fun twist on the RPG mechanics itself, it'd be great. I mean, so many of my favorite PlayStation 1 games are all RPGs. Tales of Destiny, Suikoden 1 and 2. I mean, like I said, Final Fantasy 7. I mean, then there was some like kind of like spin-offs from Square that were RPG inspired, like Parasite Eve that I just thought was super awesome. Sony did Legend of Legaia and Legend of Dragoon, which I want more of to this day, and it's been over 25 years, so I doubt that's happening. And then like the strategy elements from like Final Fantasy Tactics got me interested in those types of games. An RPG inspired strategy game that later would get me interested in things like Advanced Wars and other turn-based strategy games. But so many RPGs were on the original PlayStation. I mean, we're maybe quality like Metacritic rated 80 or above. I bet there's 30, 35 RPGs in the PlayStation that rate in that area. I mean, if you've never played one, there's just so many. Oh, the Persona 1 and 2. I love the hell out of those. Xenogears was a storyline that for my young brain didn't quite comprehend because it was way too heavy. But the threads I could pick up on kept me interested, and that was a really cool battle system, just like Legend of Legaia, actually. It just had like just kind of a cool edge to it. And then those playing so many of that style of game got me into the RPG Maker series of games. There was a really kind of a piss poor PlayStation 1 RPG Maker, but knowing that was coming out, I had like started creating scenarios and storylines and trying to come up with designs, to make my own game. And that's what led me to want to start creating games and actually explore, how I could potentially do that as a kid. I wound up going to school for audio production and recording, and ultimately I want to turn that into, working on games. And that's all because of the interest in the RPG Maker series early on, which was all inspired by my love of RPGs that got me hooked on games, period. Of course, there was, other games I played all during the original PlayStation era, not just RPGs. I mean, like Castlevania Symphony of the Night or Metal Gear Solid, all my other favorites. But those RPGs are the ones that I always kind of like, look back on, and that's a genre that like I miss those time and I miss that age of being able to kind of play through those types of games. Nowadays, your RPG experience is an action adventure game with RPG elements. I mean, I can see all the threads of why I loved those older RPGs in some of my modern favorite games. I mean, like the reasons I'm even playing Monster Hunter World right now, is because that kind of that grind and that evolution, of a core character that I loved in Japanese RPGs is kind of there. Like the adventure elements of like Mass Effect or Horizon Zero Dawn, things like that. There's these inspired RPG elements, but thrown into like these modern engines or like modern genres. So I think that's part of the reason why I love those types of games still to this day too. And also, with hardware out there the way that it is, there's really no way that I think that I would have the interest held in an RPG like I used to. I mean, I want to move on to the next experience like sooner than later, and so I wouldn't be able to. I don't think commit to that long with a Japanese inspired RPG like that. But really good memories of RPGs, and sometimes if they can be designed like with a through the lens of nostalgia, but like be like a modern game, that'll get me too. There's like Half Minute Hero on the PSP, and there was Dragon Fantasy Book 1 and 2, which were awesome, like throwback nostalgia, like just reeks of like old school RPG, but they could be finished in probably 8-10 hours or so, which is definitely doable and something that I can fit in with the type of way that I play games these days. There's no way I could spend 90 hours on a single game, and keep going back to it month after month after month, and have it be like that. like regularly. I mean, occasionally there'll be a game like that catches my attention or I fall in love with, but there's just not that much content that they can make it go that far and stretch that out. So, yeah, it's making me think about a bunch of cool old games now and that big gray box that I loved on the PlayStation. And even though it wasn't just Square Enix, but seeing that SquareSoft logo on a box just made me intrigued. And like, hey, this could be a really good one. Or seeing like the Atlas logo on it and think like, oh wow, this is going to be a hardcore one. Like I should give this one a shot. I want to go back and just kind of maybe watch some YouTube videos. Maybe we'll see some people like throwback reviews or retro reviews of some of these games. That'll scratch the itch. There's no way I'm going to dig out a console and try and boot one of these games up this day and age. But yeah, that's it. That's my solo rant. I miss Rich, so let's get him back on here. Tweet at him, demand that he gets back on here and he shares his stories with us too. We need to hear about what him and Travis did back in the day and what him and his newer friends played today and what that genre was of his interest. But again, please share with us. Give us a shout out on the social medias, all the medias, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter @NowLoadingCast. Let us know your thoughts that way, or do the even above and beyond way and give us a call to the voicemail line. Again, 605-777-0433. That would be awesome to hear from you. Record your message. Let us know. We'll play it back on my response episode to this, hopefully soon. But yeah, I think that's probably gonna do it. I think it's about 15 minutes or so. But it's designed to be a quick bite. That's the whole point of quick bite. So thanks for listening. One other thing that would be also super helpful, it's kind of annoying to have to like log into iTunes potentially if you never do it, but if you're listening to this through iTunes or if you have the ability to go to iTunes, if you look us up and just drop us a review, a little 5-star review, say whatever you want. You can say that you hate the sound of my voice, or that you also wish you had a friend like Travis when you were a kid. It doesn't matter what you say, but if you like us enough to be able to support us like that, just drop that 5-star review. That helps. Maybe that'll help spurn up some a burst of other listeners who we have no idea, have never met before, and would potentially enjoy our look back at gaming and where we came from and our little story. So we'd appreciate that very much. iTunes review when you can, if you can, and connect with us on social media. Thanks, guys.